Happy Spooktober Friday. Welcome back to another episode of Murder, Mysteries, and More. My name is Kaylee.
And my name is Desi.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to turn on post notifications. Before we get into this case, we always encourage those who have useful information for any unsolved case to please report it to your local police and sheriff department. Quick disclaimer. So this video is not recommended for persons under the age of 18 years old. It will contain triggering subjects. If you are under the age 18 years old or you're not comfortable, please click off now.
1692 in colonial Massachusetts, a group of vulnerable women were accused by many practicing dark magic, aka witchcraft. Bridgett Bishop lost two spouses, and many believed Bridgett possibly killed off one of her spouses by witchcraft. Even without proper evidence, she was still accused. Giles Corey tragically lost his life defending his wife from wrongful accusations. He was one of the few men who were also accused among the women. If you haven't watched part one, you definitely need to go watch it for sure because there is a lot of missing information that we are not going to discuss in this one. So, welcome to part two of the Salem Witch Trials.
Which I am going to do a little quick recap. So between the years 1692 and 1693, the Salem witch trials occurred in colonial Massachusetts. Multiple women were accused and executed for practicing witchcraft. In January of 1692, Samuel Parris, which he was the first ordained minister of Salem village, his 9-year-old daughter Elizabeth suffered from strange episodes of outbursts and odd body contortions. Samuel Parris owned a Caribbean slave by the name of Tituba, and she was actually arrested and accused of practicing witchcraft, along with two other women, Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne. Tituba spent 13 months in prison before she was finally set free, but unfortunately, because she was a slave, she did not receive any compensation for the false accusations against her, and Sarah Good was sent to Ishpish jail, and even her 3-year-old daughter was also sent to prison as well, which is crazy. And then July 19th, 1692, Sarah Good also tragically lost her life after being convicted and tried of witchcraft. Her husband demanded compensation for the false accusations, for wrongful execution, and his daughter's imprisonment.
Now, into Bridgett Bishop's story. She was born in the mid late 1630s in Norwich, England, and in 1660 she tied the knot with her first husband, Samuel Wasselby. We do not know if her first husband died before or after her immigration to New England. A few years prior to her immigration, she had a miscarriage. Bridgett also sadly lost another child who was an infant after she immigrated to New England. Keep in mind, 1 in every 4 women have a miscarriage, especially back then because medicine wasn't as advanced and we did not have the vaccines that we have today that protect us against those dangerous viruses. In 1666, Bridgett would marry again, and this time she would marry widower Thomas Oliver, who was also from Norwich, England, shockingly. The Olivers would settle for good in Salem town of Massachusetts, and their house was situated on the southeast corner of Washington Street and present-day Church Street. Together they had a daughter named Christian, and into addition to Thomas's Together, they had a daughter named Christian, and also Thomas had 3 adult children that were from a previous marriage. Unfortunately, in 1679, Thomas passed away.
In 1635, third time's the charm, Bridgett married another man once again. This time the man was named Edward Bishop. So the Bishops, they chose to live at her house on Washington Street. Bridgett Bishop technically did have lifetime rights to the property. However, she at the same time kind of did not have because her new husband Edward had held the rights for her. And there were many reasons why Bridget specifically was accused of witchcraft due to unforeseen circumstances. And I kind of think it is a little bit ridiculous why people had their speculations that she was doing witchcraft. Many accused her of killing her two previous husbands, which there was like no concrete evidence that she killed them. And I mean, that's just wrong to just go out and blame somebody because sometimes life just throws shit at you. So I honestly like feel that's a little bit unfair. 1680, John Ingersoll's slave Juan claimed that her spirit had pinched him, stolen eggs, and frightened the horses. 10 of her neighbors did testify against her, and there were supposed rumors of her signing the Devil's Book. In 1685, several men who had actually worked on her house, they claimed that she had puppets stuck on her cellar wall, indicating that she was practicing dark magic. Shattuck and his wife also claimed that Bridget bewitched her own son and was the reason why his health was declining. Instead of looking into like actual medical history and checking him out to see if he had like a disease or a virus, it was just easier for them to point fingers and just slap the label witchcraft.
John Louder, one of the ship tavern's workers, claims that black pig and imps in her yard after her chickens escaped and got into the tavern gardens. Many of the neighbors did not like Bridget because of her previous relationship with her previous husband, Thomas. Many of the neighbors easily believed and figured Bridget was likely an abused wife. She appeared on the streets with multiple purple bruises, scratches, and clearly looked distressed. However, they also believed she was also toxic and abusive as well. Her and Thomas were found frequently screaming at each other in the streets, and the couple once did get charged for arguing, and they had two options for this. They had to pay a fine or stand in the middle of the public square in front of everyone. Thomas's daughter paid his fine but refused to pay for Bridget's fine, so Bridget unfortunately was forced to stand in public. This made many people feel uncomfortable around her. Obviously, no, we do not condone toxic behavior, but we want to make a note that both people had their own toxic issues. June 10th, George Corwin, the sheriff, escorted her to Salem Jail. Unfortunately, she was hanged in front of a crowd. Regardless, Bridget did not deserve this.
Now into Martha Court and Giles Court. So Martha Pennon Court was born around 1618. Information about Martha outside her birthday is kind of gray. She is a real person though, and we'll try to do our best to explain what happened to her and what her story is. In 1677, it is believed that she gave birth to a mixed-race son, Ben Ani, and the father is believed to most likely be a Native American, but he could have been African American. Details on this are a little gray. In 1684, it is claimed that she married a man named Henry Rich, and they had at least one son, Thomas. April 27, 1690, Henry Rich passed away, and not too long after she got remarried to a Salem village farmer and a watchman, and his name was Giles Corey. She would be Giles' third wife, and for 10 of the years that she was married to him, she did live separately from Giles and their son Thomas, and she spent that time raising Ben Ani. In 1692, both Martha and Giles became members of the church. However, a lot of people did say that the couple appeared unhappy and that they would bicker often. In March 1692, Giles insisted that he wanted to attend an investigation of Nathan Ingersoll's tavern. We previously mentioned that one of the incidents Bridget was accused did happen there.
But he still wanted to go there and investigate. However, Martha said it was not a good idea, and even the neighbors also said it was a bad idea. Martha was also a little skeptical about witches and the devil. Giles went to others about what his wife said instead of protecting her privacy and beliefs. March 12th, Ann Putnam Jr. claimed to have seen her spirit. March 19th, a warrant was issued for Martha due to accusations claiming that she hurt Ann Putnam Sr., Ann Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, Abigail Williams, and Elizabeth Hubbard. Monday, March 21st, she was brought to Nathan's Tavern. During Sunday worship service, Abigail Williams went up to the minister, Reverend Deodat Lawson, and said that she saw Martha's spirit leave her body and sit on a beam holding a yellow bird. Constable Joseph Herrick arrested her the very next day, and others joined in and started making additional false accusations against Martha. Martha was questioned by magistrates John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin. And this was Martha's response to that. I never had anything to do with witchcraft since I was born. I am a gospel woman. She was accused of having a familiar, and that familiar was a bird.
And during one point of her interrogation, she says, quote, "Do you not see that these children and women are rational and sober as their neighbors when their hands are fastened?" End quote. April 14th, Mercy Lewis states that Giles' ghost paid her a visit and forced her to sign the Devil's Book. Giles Corey stood and he did defend his wife for the accusations against her, and he also was arrested on April 18th, the same day Bridgett Bishop was arrested. Abigail Hobbs and Mercy Lewis accused him of being a witch. On April 18th, he refused to plead guilty. He also refused to say that his wife was guilty. At first, Martha kept her innocence until those in the crowd acted out in fits, making it seem like she was controlling others. May 25th, she was transferred to Boston's jail along with Rebecca Nurse, Dorcas Good, Sarah Cloyce, John and Elizabeth Proctor. May 31st, Abigail Williams mentioned her disposition, and Abigail Williams claims her specter visited her 3 times and caused her to suffer immense anxiety and fear. September 9th, the court did find Martha guilty. In September 17th, Giles Corey was pressed to death, and that basically means it's a method of torture that forces someone into confession. Giles Corey absolutely refused to confess. His son-in-law would inherit his property. September 22nd, 1692, Martha was one of the last in the group to be hanged.
Absolutely none of these women deserve to be accused of false rumors. They most certainly did not deserve to lose their lives over this. Giles Corey also did not deserve to die. He was one of the few men who stood his ground and refused to go against his wife, even if it cost his life. He died a true hero. So why were certain groups of women accused over others? First of all, these women had many things in common with each other, most of them being married more than once and losing at least one spouse. Back then, a divorce was heavily looked down upon, even if both spouses were unhappy or the marriage was toxic. It was expected that you just completely deal with it, and of course, up until recently, it has become more acceptable. Remarrying after death was also looked down upon. Some accusers thought if these women kept remarrying and their spouses died, that they had to be involved somehow, without even looking for concrete evidence. Diseases and lack of medicine, of course, especially back then, can cause higher death rates. Men were also more likely to participate in war, which is taxing on the body. It can cause extensive stress from being far away from their families, and there was no awareness of PTSD back then. Some of those men could have easily been suicidal.
Also, women often would stay home and men would work dangerous and difficult jobs. And unlike today, there was not much safety in jobs, so work accidents were more common and more deadly. And some of these women also had miscarriages and lost their children. Until very recently, and even now, anytime a woman has had a miscarriage, it is seen as taboo. It is believed back then if you had a miscarriage or lost a child, it was the woman's fault, even if it was some medical reason. People just were like, oh, well, she's a horrible person if she had a miscarriage, which is so messed up because it is not their fault. And I want to emphasize that The mortality rates back then among infants was extremely high due to multiple reasons that are not witchcraft. Back then, it was not known that you can't put stuffed animals or blankets in with infants in their cribs because it can cause them to suffocate. And it was also common to co-sleep, and people were not as aware of the dangers that can happen when you co-sleep. They also did not have vaccines like we do now, so many viruses could easily kill off a child because their immune system isn't used to these viruses. Now, Tituba's case is a little different because she was a slave and she was Caribbean. Most of the witches were actually white women, but there is a good chance that she was accused and looked down upon because she looked different. Other reasons why some women were accused is that these little girls could have had mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, which can cause people to hallucinate, and the list goes on.
Now, there is also another theory to this, which is ergot. And ergot is a fungus that grows rye grains. If ingested, though, it can cause hallucinations and convulsions. Researcher Linda Caporial in 1976 argued that weather conditions during this time in Salem would have allowed ergot to grow. She believes that the girls could have easily suffered from ergot poisoning, and also because the women who were accused were very vulnerable. Many would believe the little girls' stories over their testimonies, especially because all these women were deeply hated by many for many reasons beyond their control. In October 1692, Governor William Phips put an end to the horrific trials. 1697, Massachusetts General Court ordered a day of fasting to remember these innocent women and serve as a reminder of the injustice they endured. In 1711, the legislature passed a bill to restore rights to those accused and granted compensation to their heirs.
Okay, now into the Salem witch trials in literature and movies. So Arthur Miller's 1953 play, which many of us have heard about, is The Crucible, and it's been performed many times to remind us of the injustice of the dark. A quick summary of the play is it starts off with Reverend Paris finding naked women, including Tituba, dancing in the woods, and they claim that they are bewitched women. Hundreds of women are accused of witchcraft, and one of them including Elizabeth Proctor. Elizabeth Proctor, she claims her innocence. And also during this, her husband had an affair with a girl named Abigail. Abigail accused Elizabeth of witchcraft. John eventually admits that he did have an affair with Abigail and it spares his wife from being executed. In 1996, the Crucible movie was created based on the book, and then the 1993 Hocus Pocus movie is loosely based off the trials. So the movie is set in the 1990s, and this was 1 year after a memorial was erected in Salem to remember 20 of the women who were wrongfully executed in 1692. And the sisters in the movie are completely fictional, so they're not real. But I do want to mention an interesting thing I found is that actress Sarah Jessica Parker, who plays the sister Sarah, she is actually related to one of the women who were actually accused during the Salem witch trials, and that is Esther Elwell. And then other notable books is Tituba, Black Witch of Salem. It's a fictional book, but Tituba is actually a real person. And then A Storm of Witchcraft, which is a nonfiction book, and it's written by Emerson W. Baker. And there's many more that you can find online through Amazon. I'm sure Netflix might even have something. There's a lot.
Mm-hmm. But into Reddit comments, which our first post is going to be today. I learned during the Salem witch trials, the accused witches weren't actually burned at the stake. The majority were jailed and some were hanged, but none of the 2,000 people accused ever got burned alive. Stereo on my mind, and the youngest to be jailed for assumption of witchcraft was a 5-year-old girl, which is fucked up.
Very fucked up. It's like, how are you gonna put a 5-year-old in jail?
How fucked up is fucked up? That's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
And then deer underscore in underscore the antelope. During the Salem witch trials, one guy also died by crushing, which that was Giles Corey, and he was being crushed under rocks, but it's believed he was the only one. Yep, his name's Giles Corey for anyone wanting to find out more.
Yep. Deleted says, I never trust anything from the History Channel anymore. No, they weren't burned at Salem. Even in Europe, most weren't burned, but the History Channel is garbage. Sometimes. Sometimes it does have some
Yep.
factual stuff, but when it comes to that, it's kind of garbage.
No underscore world is 2657. They were burned in the 1400s in Europe, which there was other witch trials. Has been said, a lot were considered natural herbal healers, which the church associated with paganism.
Bowling Rocks, one was stoned to death.
Yep,
Crazy.
very crazy.
Very crazy.
Jugger Jew, what? It's wild to think of a time where we had zero concept of electricity. I can see why folks would have thought witchcraft was real. They simply had no scientific basis to say, no, this is stupid, what the fuck are we doing? That, along with fierce belief in their religion, led to this craziness. Yeah.
Uh, this person's username is a fishy vagina.
What? That probably stinks.
A fishy vagina. Oh, so they were lucky then. Nah.
No, they definitely were not.
Oh my god. Chris McTaggart. Marilyn Manson burned the witches has no meaning anymore. You are right. Does
That
not.
is true.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next post is Books on Salem Witch Trials. Floridan Reader, The Witches Salem 1692 by Stacy Schiff.
Energetic Starfish says the Penguin Book of Witches has transcripts from the actual trials, which are really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Kingrave, if you want historical books, I'm actually taking a class on the history of witchcraft right now. We're about to start our Salem unit. Our required reading is Salem Possessed by Paula Boyer and Stephanie Nissenbaum. Can't speak of its good or not yet, but it seems to focus on the social context that led to the trials. So if that seems interesting to you, good luck. LOL.
LOL. Nerd who
Lol.
goes outside. May I suggest a podcast in addition to books? The first series of an Unobscured does a really good deep dive with interviews with experts.
I love a good podcast.
So do I. Everyone keeps saying the Crucible, the Crucible.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Which
It's coming.
Which I did read that in school. I don't know if you
Nope.
you you didn't have to.
Nope.
That's surprising.
No, they didn't make us read it. They did not. I don't even think they went over Salem Witch Trials.
They went over it, a little bit of it.
Not when I was in school. The Salem witch trials wreaked havoc among the many innocent women in the village of Salem, Massachusetts. Bridgett Bishop suffered a very difficult life that was cut too short. Martha was one of the last to be executed for rational reasons. Thankfully, the trials have ended. Today, we have literature such as The Crucible to serve as a reminder of the injustice these women endured. May all these beautiful women lay to rest and never be forgotten. Thank you for listening to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. Remember to always keep your eyes open and do what's right.